Hello. This step-back cupboard is going to be a combination of both of these, both from the mid-18th century. Now, you don't find these cupboards very often. They're primitive, but aside from the fact of them being primitive, very often in the Victorian times, if these cupboards survived, they would change them drastically. They'd strip them, they'd repaint them different colors, they'd add trim or take away trim. So what you're seeing there has probably been refinished at some point, even though they're very old. And what I'm trying to do is recreate a painted step-back cupboard. And they would have used reds and blues and greens and yellows and all sorts of colors. They were very fond of painted furniture, especially among the middle classes and the lower classes. So I'm just cutting out some balsa wood here, and this is the side that I'm working on, and there'll be two sides that are exactly the same. And this is a very clean piece of balsa wood, and it's 1/8 inch thick that I'm working with. There aren't any little bits of grain in there that are stopping my knife from going through pretty smoothly, so this moved pretty quickly. And I'm just using up my stash of balsa wood. But I'm really enjoying working with balsa wood. I have found that although it isn't a very sturdy wood, you can do quite a bit with it. I'm not an expert. I don't know how to do real carpentry or joinery work. I'm at a pretty basic level. But I think I'm doing pretty well with what I have, and it's easy. And I want other people to see how easy it is so that, if they want to make use of balsa wood or even foam, you could use some kinds of foam board to make furniture like this. If you're clever enough to be able to cut, block up the raw edges so that the foam isn't exposed. If you're going to paint it, you could make it look pretty realistic. And my goal for this set of furniture is to make it as realistic as possible without having a lot of functionality. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to have drawers that open and close because I think it's just going to add too much stress to the wood because it's so soft. So when you see cupboard doors or drawers, basically they're not going to be functional, because this is a display item too, and it's not meant to be played with or handled very much. You're making this for kids, forget it. It wouldn't last. They'd crush it. So, but anyway, that's part of the background for this. But on the balsa wood, I have to make the cuts as precision as I'm able to. I tend to make the cuts a little generous so I can go back in and trim if I have to. And I just made some basic templates based on those two cupboards that you saw in the beginning. But I do change stuff as I go. And if I were to make these available to people, it would be very difficult because I almost never follow the pattern exactly. I tend to make changes as I go along. So maybe someday I will make a set of plans that are actually not changed midstream and make those available, but it'll be sometime down the road, I think. Writing directions for stuff too can be tricky to make it comprehensible and understandable. So I'm not quite there yet. What I'm doing here is I'm just marking out where the cupboard could be, but as I'm doing that, I realize I would like to have that cupboard be a little wider, so I'm just going to pencil it in lightly so that I can change my mind if I really want to when I get further down the road here. And yeah, it does look a little narrow, so I'll draw a few more lines in and see how it looks. But I know I do want the knobs there and it's centered, so for now that's okay. Now I'm going to just glue this together. And I wanted the front to overlap so that you didn't see the raw edges right away. And they'll be sanded, and there'll be plenty of paint on it, so you wouldn't see them, but I would rather have the raw edges on the sides rather than on the front. So I'm going to cut these back a little bit, because at first I was going to put the raw edges in the front, and then I decided that wouldn't be a good idea, so that's why I'm trimming it. And you see what I mean by making changes as I go along. So I'll start out with cutting a little bit off, and then I'll see what that looks like, and I may cut more. I really want that front leg to be narrower, so I'll end up cutting off a little bit more, I think. And it looks even. Just have to trim a little off the top. There. Now I'm just going to glue it together. First I've got to make that notch a little lower, just to make sure it sits flat, that countertop. Yeah, it needs a little more trimming. That outside piece will make a part of the leg, and it'll look a little more natural. Give it a quick sand. Make sure there's no little ragged pieces. Yeah, that's better. That's what I was talking about, narrower front of the leg. And then when that rests along the front, that makes it look more like the size it ought to be, not too wide. And then I'll put a little chunk of wood in there later to square it off, but you won't see that. Make sure there's plenty of glue, no air pockets. I'm not worried about a little bit of glue dripping. I'll wipe it off, and even if it soaks into the wood, I'm still going to sand it. Because I'm going to paint this whole thing, I'm not concerned about whether the paint absorbs or not into the glue. Stain is a little bit of a different issue, and even though you're supposed to be able to stain this glue, I found that it doesn't work real well. I did that wrong. I have to take that off, wipe it off. I meant to do it the other way, because the front has to be exposed completely. And so I've got to put more glue and just scrape that off. There. That's much better. And I'll just pin it. And as I've said before, I'm not worried about pinholes. If you were to stain this, of course, the pinholes would probably show up, so. But that thick paint that I use, matte paint, will cover any pinholes completely. It'll just go right into the hole. Okay. Now I have to do the countertop. And I want it to overlap a little over the front and a little bit on the sides. So I'm going to make a notch. And just cut out the notches. And that's overlapping a little too much on the sides, so I'll trim that off, and that will be my template for the wood. There. That's just about right. And now I can cut it out of the balsa wood. And again, I'm using a 1/8 inch thick balsa wood for this top. And the rest of the wood will be 1/16 for the shelves and the backing. I always cut a little past the line, and that way I don't have to worry about breaking any of it off. Now I'll just glue that in place. I just have a little bit of trimming. It's just scrappy stuff hanging around. Just have to make sure to cut that scrap stuff out of there so it doesn't interfere with how it sits. That's better. Just going to apply a bead of glue all the way around, and then I'm just going to pin it in place. And it'll need to dry for a little while. These cupboards are very rare to find intact, so it's really hard to understand what they may have actually looked like as far as the colors are concerned. And as I've already said in the beginning, but I'll mention it again, as they got passed down, they would have been changed and painted or stripped and stained, trims added or taken away. But there are a few out there with the original paint still visible, and you can imagine how much those are worth. Primitive furniture from that time period is very popular, so now I'm making the shelves, and these are going to gradually step back. In other words, each shelf will be a little smaller as it goes up, and that's why they call it a step back cupboard. And this makes it a little easier to reach the things that are in the cupboard. I just put the top on, and now the shelves will go in. That's the backing. I've already pre-cut all of that, measured it. But I need to put the shelves in before I put the backing on. But here's the backing. I'm just using a paintbrush to apply the glue. I want it to look like planks, so I'm just making it out of planks of the 1/16 rather, balsa wood. And I'm just pushing it together on the mat, lining it up with the lines that are on the mat. And I'll let that dry. If you're careful not to have any air pockets in the glue, it will just sort of glom onto the other piece. And you can wipe the excess glue off. And of course this glue is sandable once it dries. It says it's stainable, but it doesn't really take the stain up very well, because I've experimented with it, and I guess that's a drawback for this type of glue. But I like it. It dries rather quickly, although it doesn't dry too quickly. And it sands easily. And it doesn't smell bad. And it's not expensive either, so for me it's fine. Works out great. Checking the size, and that looks just about right. And when it's dry, it'll add strength to the cupboard. Now I'm just scoring the cupboard doors a little more so that I can see the outline of them, and then I'll be able to see it once the paint is on. So I did decide to make them a little wider. I just thought it looked a little bit better. And this is just a number 2 pencil that I'm using. I'm also going to cut it after I paint it with an X-Acto knife. Just a little bit, so it looks like it's, you know, it could open, but it won't be able to be opened. I won't go all the way through. Give it a quick sand with some 600 grit sandpaper. I put it in a roll so I can go into those curves easily. And I did do a little more significant sanding than you see here. I sanded the sides so that they wouldn't be as visible once it was painted. Where there's a raw edge where it was cut, smoothed it out. Now these are the shelves, and I'm going to put them in one at a time. And I just paint a little bit of glue onto the side and then onto the edge and push them in. Largest to smallest up at the top. And you see the back is somewhat open. I'm not closing that up completely yet. It will be closed with the paneled backing. This got a little fiddly because they didn't want to stay in place, and one of them kept tilting toward the back, but I finally did get it to the shelves to straighten out. If they're crooked, because the stuff is so small, you can tell right away. It just looks wonky and it doesn't look good. So I was really careful about how I align them. And that one had to be trimmed a little bit. And now I'm going to make the hinges, and these are bow tie hinges that I'm going to make. And this is just some brown cardstock that I've had. And those are just pins. Those are straight pins with metal heads, and those are going to be the handles after I paint them. And they'll be painted black. I'm going to put an X through these and then draw a line on the side, as you see on the right, that white. On each side, and then I will cut along where you see that red cut line that I put in, and I'll use scissors and an X-Acto knife to cut it out. You have to use some rather stiff board for this. It doesn't have to be thick, but it does need to be stiff. And that's what a bow tie hinge will look like when it's finished. Well, close to finished. Only these will be painted black. I started out with some scissors and then I ended up using the X-Acto knife. I just needed a little cleaner cut. And there it is. And I need to make 3 more. Just give this a little trim. There, and it's not finished. I need to cut up some straight pins and make the center part of it, and then I'll paint these. I'm going to speed ahead here. There's all 4. I had to put them in this little pot because I couldn't see them against the background there. Okay, now I'm going to glue on a little piece of pin that I've cut out. And I'm using Ultra Control super glue. The other super glue is a little too watery, so I'm not using that. Let it dry. It's getting stuck to the tweezers, but let's pick out another one here. And I'm just measuring it and cutting a piece of straight pin and gluing it down the center. Give it more of a hinge look. That's the first one. And there again, I'm just putting a little bead of glue. I'm just using a very little bit. Putting it on. That one wanted to get away from me. And there. So I think you get the idea. That's the piece of pin. Now I need to paint this. It's all dried and cured, the glue. And I'm using milk chocolate apple barrel matte finish. I'm just going to put a generous amount on without making too many brush strokes visible. It'll fill those little pinholes up and any other little cracks. And this dries pretty quickly, so I can keep working. And this will be the base color. Brown has a lot of red in it, and brown is made from mixing green and red together. But this has quite a bit of white in it as well, so it gives it that chocolate brown look. I didn't want to paint this dark because I want the other colors I'm going to add to lay on top of it and be more prominent. Otherwise, if you use a dark brown, the other colors will just won't show up as well. So putting this as the base color. And now I'm using Barn Red, and Barn Red is well, it's red. It's a very deep red, but it has a lot of brown in it. And I'm just brushing, mostly dry brushing, but I'm getting it all over. It's a little hard to see with the kind of lighting I have, but I am painting the whole thing. It's just some places it's going to be a little heavier than others. I want to give this some depth. It's a really pretty color. However, I have a lot of barns, and my barns are a lot brighter red than this, and the barn red that I've used to repaint barns is much brighter. But it is still a pretty color, and it's suitable for this. So, and that's made by Decor Paint, and it is also a satin finish, so it's not the same finish. I'm just going to go over those lines a little bit more so I can keep seeing them on the cupboard. And this is an Inktense pencil, and there's still a little bit of wet paint, so it's going to pick up that black color. I had to sharpen the pencil very sharp, very pointed, so I could do this. And now I'm going to put some museum wax here and there, all over. Here and there, all over. Does that make sense? Well, you get what I'm saying. It's not going to be completely covered, but it'll be everywhere. Still doesn't make sense, but you see what I'm saying. And what this does is this makes it so that when you put the next layer, the final layer of paint on, and apply a little sandpaper, and I'm going to use 600 grit sandpaper, it will lift some of that color, but not all of it. Okay. Go to the next step, which will be Flag Red. And this is a matte finish, and this is watered down 2:1. So 1 part paint and 2 parts water. And I'll go over the whole thing with this. And most of that paint's not going to stick very well to where I put the wax, which is the idea, but it is brightening it up quite a bit. It's a completely different color now, but there's still bits of those other colors shining through. And then I'm taking a little sandpaper while it's still damp and going over it, and it mixes it a bit, but it also lifts some of the color up. And now I'm going to put Mod Podge, the matte version, over the whole piece. And I'm doing all of my furniture this way. Layers of paint and then Mod Podge to finish it off and pull the colors together. And the nice thing about this Mod Podge is even though it looks like, you know, I'm putting a lot on and it doesn't look terribly even, but it's as even as I can get it. It does all dry completely clear, and you don't see globs of it if you're careful. So this will work out just fine. I'm just not going to do the very back. Okay, there it is. And now I'm going to put the little handles in. Those are just pins, and I dip them in matte black paint. And they're just the right size. So I have two, put those in. And then I'll have to touch them up later because I was a little rough with them and I need to touch up the places where the paint came off. And now I'm going to put the hinges in as soon as I get them out. I painted them black, same matte black paint. And I'll just glue those on with a little bit of super glue. And again, it's the Ultra Control super glue. So it's a gel. It doesn't drip all over the place. There. I just tried to line up that pin with the cupboard to where the cupboard would open. The pin that goes straight through. And I'm just eyeballing it, putting them where I think they ought to go. And there's all four of them. And it's not quite finished yet. I'm going to touch up these little hinges and the knobs. I still have to put a little catch on the front of it, and I'm going to make that out of wood. But here I just wanted to show you the color. The Mod Podge is dry, almost completely dry anyway. There's a few little nicks there that I need to address at some point. I put it against this paper so that you could see the color better. Okay, now I have a little piece of wooden dowel, and this is a 1/16 square dowel. And I'm cutting it at an angle on two sides so that it angles inward. And I'm going to use a very, very fine pin to put through it. There, you see how tiny that is. It's actually a taxidermy pin. The first one I put in split the wood in it because it wasn't thin enough. And that was the one that split it. And I had two sizes. I thought I had the really thin one, and I was going to use that. But I ended up using the thinnest taxidermy pin that I had, and that didn't split the wood. I had to actually cut two of these little pieces of wood. I'm just going to push it all the way through very carefully and just stick it in the wood after I paint it, just like that. And I'll paint it. And I'll just put a little darker color on it after I put it in, just to make sure that it matches the wood. And there it is. It's not a very clear picture, but you get the idea. And I want to put that pretty much in the center. And it will still turn after the paint's dry. Although, of course, the door doesn't open, so it doesn't matter if it turns or not. There, that would be an authentic little fixture on the cupboard. And that is finished. There's the hinges, the knobs, and the little catch that keeps the doors from opening. And you can still see the back of it has the planks. Now this is in my little forced perspective box, so you can see what it looks like with some of the dishes I made. And there's a broom to the right of the cupboard that I made, but I actually made that for the 1930s house. The broom isn't actually really authentic looking, but I just wanted you to see what it looked like. And there's that other little piece of furniture I made, the first piece. I have to make a cushion for that. This was a fun project. I enjoyed doing this. I hope you enjoyed watching. And my next project is going to be a table for the kitchen. And I've already picked that out, but you'll see that probably next week sometime. Well, thank you for watching, and I hope you'll like and subscribe. Bye-bye.